How are you?
Good. Oh my gosh, I've heard so much about you, so it's
I
nice
hope
to meet
it wasn't
you.
all bad.
It was quite bad. No, I'm joking. It was
Good to meet
amazing.
you.
I'm just jumping on straight on into this. You believe that aging is not a fate we must accept, but rather it's a disease that can be treated and reversed.
Absolutely. So the child who's going to live to 150, I believe, is already born.
Wow. So it's a mindset shift.
When you talk about protein shakes, most of them are garbage. What can we do? There was a diametric shift in what we were thinking in the last 5 years. So people became a little bit more aware of what I like to call advanced biohacking. You're keeping someone alive on a ventilator. Are they really alive?
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hyperscale. I'm here in our Dubai studio today, and I have a very amazing guest with me who I have heard so much about, so it's a great pleasure to have him on the show, Dr. Jaffer Khan. Lovely to see you here.
Thank you, Brian. Lovely to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation.
And we are going to be talking about all things longevity, rejuvenation medicine. First, tell me a little bit about how you got into the space, because you're originally a surgeon and now you're traveling the world. I always hear your name mentioned. So tell us how you got into this.
Well, I'm 26 years in Dubai. And when I first came here, essentially as a trained burns, plastic surgery, microvascular surgery, and all of hand surgery, we did quite a lot of this training in the United Kingdom to get our specialty. And then, of course, the whole dynamic moved towards aesthetic plastic surgery, and so that took over. The consumer forces drove us all, most of us, that way. And then 26 years in Dubai, and then suddenly I got this feeling that, look, we've been making people beautiful on the outside, giving them some added self-confidence, self-esteem, so on. But what about their internal cellular health? I mean, because when you see people who are a little bit older, you notice changes in the skin that despite what you do, you can't really change it back to where it was or even close to where it was at times. And so my whole interest started about internal cellular health and aging.
Interesting. So I've heard from the community that perhaps people think in the future that we might be able to solve aging at the molecular level. Can you tell us a little bit about the science behind what you've learned when it comes to cellular aging? I'm just jumping on straight on into this.
No, fantastic. Look, there is a scientific view which could get a little bit complicated, but let's look at it in a slightly more simplistic and digestible manner.
That would be great.
That really inflammation in our bodies is what is the key driver. Inflammation and what we call genotoxicity. Mm-hmm. So basically our cells are subject to so many external forces that the epigenetics, which is really more important than the genetics, comes into play. Now that would mean your sleep patterns, your diet, your exercise, basically even your mental health, and how you perceive things, even positivity and negativity. Yes. So when you're looking at cellular aging, you're really looking at inflammation as one of the key drivers. Now, what can we do? Well, there's a whole host of them, but the main thing I think right now is the battle against inflammation.
Hi everyone, I'm gonna make this quick so you can get back to enjoying this episode of Hyperscale. But I have a small favor to ask of you. I really need your help in order to take this podcast to the next level. And it all starts with you, our amazing listeners. By hitting the subscribe button, you not only tell the world that you're part of a community of big thinkers who are hungry for knowledge and fascinated by innovation, but you also help us bring even more amazing guests onto the show so that we can shape the future by asking all the right questions. So when we're thinking about inflammation and, the things that you mentioned now are a lot of the things my granny tells me to do, right? Sleep, eat healthy, be happy, community, surround yourself by good people. Is that really what we need to be doing when it comes to aging? Is there anything else that we could be doing in terms of treatments? Like, say someone wants to live till 150 years old. Do you even think that this is a possibility?
Okay, let me dissect that a little bit. See, I think it is possible in the future for sure, and I'm not talking about the distant future, but the near future, that we could live well. So the child who's going to live to 150, I believe, is already born.
Wow.
Now, what can we do? All of the things that you're talking about are things that we've been listening to for a few years. But when I was growing up as a kid in New York, the best breakfast you could eat was Kellogg's cornflakes and cow's milk. And then to make things even nicer, they introduced Frosties with sugar on it. And so, everything was okay. And this is what we've grown up listening to. Now, there was a diametric shift in what we were thinking in the last 5 years. So people became a little bit more aware of what I like to call advanced biohacking. The things like, okay, we have to look at it after our diet, sleep, exercise. Yes, we know these things. But we also have to look at our gut health. And our gut health is the primary driver of inflammation. So when you look at certain habits that we've acquired over the years, whether it's the food industry or the drug industry, let's talk about food first.
Yes.
We're the only mammal that drinks another mammal's milk for all our life. So is it surprising that we become lactose intolerant? We take so much sugar in our diet that we become insulin resistant. You know that insulin doesn't work anymore. We can't drive the sugar into our cells. Then we, ever since the flour mill started in the 1800s, we've been eating white flour. Okay, we've become a little more aware now, but so we're gluten intolerant. I mean, all of these things are happening as a function. All the things that are driving inflammation in our bodies are a function of our diet largely and our environment. So if you look at the largest immune organ in your body, it's your gut.
So what kind of things should we be eating? Because a lot of what you riddled off then is, for a lot of people, they're staples.
Exactly. But they're living different lifestyle when it's their staples. Okay, if you need energy, if you're on the paddy fields all day or you're mining all day or even in a modern day construction site, you tend to eat less and you tend to eat less frequently because you're working quite hard. And sometimes the environmental conditions are also quite harsh. So I think that if we are going to think about what we shouldn't eat, I would say cut out sugar, cut out carbohydrates for a large extent. Try not to take dairy products, particularly lactose-rich dairy products, and bread. If you can cut these things out as an initial start, we also then, of course, there are advanced things. You can look at your gut biome. So we have, 26 foot of intestine with different bacteria or organisms, I would say, growing in different areas in different quantities. Now, there's a relationship here. If I take all of the trillion bacteria out, it's almost a kilogram if we weigh. So now you have to see how this is balancing, and this is reflecting on your gut absorptive capacity. Remember, you have one cellular layer separating you from a sewage line. Okay, so that your capacity to absorb toxins or absorb metabolites or anything that could potentially get into your bloodstream and harm you, it's quite high if you don't have a very nice protective layer.
Is that when people get like leaky gut?
Exactly, and that's the term is leaky gut for this. Not able to, and even if you think about autism, you've heard about autism, obviously.
Yes.
So the theory is that autism is because of leaky gut in children and formula milk, because we moved from giving mother's milk. Of course, some mothers are not capable of producing milk. That happens. But more and more, the world was moving towards giving formula. And, when I was growing up also, we heard that so many different companies making different formulas, each one better than the other. But if the gut is leaky, then formula milk can arrest brain development.
I think sometimes as well, there was like seed oils in the formula milk.
Exactly. Seed oils, generally, again, you've heard this. We got this fad of eating corn oil, then we got sunflower oil, and then, the food industry has been giving us information, much as the pharma industry gives us information. I'm not sure it's always correct, with being totally diplomatic.
Yeah. Well, of course. Do you remember when we were in school? Well, certainly when I was in school, we used to have those food pyramids. And at the bottom, the foods that you should be eating a lot of were the flour, the cereal, the carbs, all of these sorts of things. And then, we've got the vegetables, sort of thing. And it was all completely backwards as far as I'm concerned with what I eat these days. And like you, have cut out sugar. I don't really eat, flour or carbohydrates or pastas or anything like this. Like I do try and eat quite a wholesome diet. And I've felt so much better over the years for doing this.
Correct.
And there's that saying that, what is that saying about like your gut? Go with your gut.
You are what you eat.
Yeah, you are what you eat, and go with your gut, right? And they sometimes say that the gut is like a second brain, and it actually does influence your decisions.
Well, absolutely, because there is a direct, to call it the gut-brain, if you like, link. And it does exist. And I believe that, when you feel you're having less memory, less cognitive function, we call cognitive function, it is really a function of how much you're eating and at what frequency. Like intermittent fasting is great. The whole principle is that when we have inflammation, we develop more cells which are what we call senescent cells. Regenerative principles are about replacing the cells that are dying more efficiently and mopping up the dead cells. That process is what stops with aging. So your number of senescent cells, which are not reproducing correctly, are increasing. Your capability to remove these cells is decreasing because you're not regenerating. And then what happens is that these senescent cells also secrete inflammatory factors, which causes a cascading effect. So what do? Well, essentially, at the present moment, if you want to have a correct analysis, we start by looking at blood parameters.
Okay.
So that would be gut health, as I mentioned, gut biomes, so which is a stool sample essentially, your hormonal profile, your metabolic profile, and your genetic profile. Sometimes these tests take 1 month to come back. So when you're looking at screening, as we do today, you call a well man check or well woman check, there are lots of blood tests you do, kidney profile, liver profile, so on. And this is fine. But there are many, many more sophisticated tests which will give you more clear indications of what your biological age is versus your chronological age.
Are these tests that are quite readily available to the public, or do the public even know about these tests?
I would say they are not readily available and the public doesn't know. In fact, to be honest, probably a lot of doctors don't know.
Why don't doctors know about these if they're such an important testing factor of longevity and healthiness?
Because we are in a phase of evolution of future medicine. We have had decades of being told that you could live off a tablet for your high blood pressure or a tablet for your cholesterol. We seem to be reactive in our treatments to treat symptoms and not causes. So where you're spending billions of dollars on healthcare, we are not doing healthcare, we're doing sick care.
Yes, yeah.
So we are not, the majority of the money that is being spent on age-related diseases is going towards chronic diseases which we don't need to have. There's only, $200 million a year spent on aging research. So doctors don't know because it has not been the thrust of our education. You have to think laterally. And by the way, this is happening rather quickly. In awareness, such as what you're doing today, and what happens in a lot of, if you like, podcasts, documentaries, even books by leading figures, like Asprey, Hyman, David Sinclair.
Great names.
All of these this is all coming out, and this is inspiring people like myself to do more, and hopefully I'll be able to inspire a couple, and this will be a cascade, which I hope will take us into the next generation of future medicine, which is not far.
So it's a mindset shift,
Yes.
essentially, is what we're asking people to at least start with. And we come and we get tested, we get these profiling things. What kind of things could we expect to see? And say we get some results back which are like, Oh my gosh, so undesirable. Like, for instance, I got my glycan age test back must have been about a year ago now. I was 7 years older.
Seriously?
I was 7 years older.
Well, how old are you now? 10?
Thanks. 33 now. So I was 32 when I got my test back. And I was just so horrified and surprised. And especially since I felt like I'd been taking such good care of myself on my journey. And I actually retested, and I get my results back next week. So I'm excited to see how they've progressed, because the interesting thing about when I got tested is he said to me, this is your first time getting tested. How do you know that you weren't even older before? Like, maybe this is you improving over the years, maybe like during COVID or when you were starting your business, like you were super stressed, and actually like you've been getting younger, but you just didn't know because this is your first time testing.
Right. Look, there's a couple of things here. Firstly, your biological age versus your chronological age, and these tests are talking about glycan age. Basically, it shows you the glycosylation of the sugars around the IgG molecule. And this gives you an idea of how much inflammation you have in your body. This, plus, you heard of the telomere test,
Yes.
which tells you the length of your telomeres, and as they decrease, finally age gets less and less, and then DNA methylation. So these tests are something like what you might call the blood pressure of your common day analysis. It's a trend. I believe it has a lot of potential to give us screening to see which direction are we going in. So the trend is really important. The result is important too. But I think we also have to take it in conjunction with a number of other things that we're looking at, not on its own. Remember, your genetics is a book. So which page you open and which page you read, your body reads, that depends on your epigenetic. So that's 80% of the game. So now I might carry a gene for high blood pressure, and that's in my book. But my page doesn't open, doesn't get read because of my epigenetic. Now, you can change epigenetic profile by your lifestyle and all the things that we've discussed. But there is something called the exposome now. So it's not just epigenetic, it's exposome. In other words, what are we exposed to? And who is responsible for those exposures? That's another big question. So pollutants, both in the air and on our food, insecticides, hormones in our food chain, I can go on. But all of this, lack of open spaces, the fact that cities are going vertical and less horizontal. And so, in other words, all of these things are perhaps contributory factors as well to the fact that we don't age well at the moment.
So you're obviously a city slicker. I've heard where all your houses are. They're very much in the cities, and I'm pretty much a city slicker myself. I escaped my very small town farm in New Zealand many years back. What do we do if the water's not good, if there's pollution in the air? Like, how can we live well?
We do our best. I think there's certainly a lot we can do by modifying our habits. We can do a lot even by modifying our thoughts. There are 30 billion cellular processes in your body every second. So as you take a deep breath or have a positive thought, that the proteins that are being synthesized at that second are changing. And that's why meditation, positive thought processes, having some time for yourself, getting, all the stuff you read is a blue light, protection and so on. All of these things will help. And, if you exercise regularly, it doesn't matter if you're living in a building so much. You can always go to the park for a walk. I mean, there are things we can do. We have to adapt. But we're not hunting for our food anymore. So we do have that extra time. And so I think it is more about behavioral changes, which I think we have to be cognizant of.
It's interesting what you said about the thought then. And actually, as you said it, take a deep breath, positive thought. I found myself doing that. But I was reading a statistic recently, and I can't remember the exact amount, but by the time we're older, we literally have the same thoughts every single day. Like a good percentage, I think it was like 80 or 90% of our thoughts every single day were the same thoughts as the day before.
That's right. And, there are many people who are involved in neuro-linguistic programming and so on.
I've done
And you've
the
done all
course,
of that.
very interesting.
So we wake up with the same thoughts every single day. And we have to be able to tell ourselves. Now we're moving into a whole different realm, of course, and this is less medical and more something we can do.
Yeah.
But yes, it's true. We do wake up with the same thought process, and so we haven't rewired our brains. We need to do that. I think that's super important because mental health. I see when we at AEON Clinic, for example, we have stress management. We have a psychiatrist. We do sleep studies. We have yoga. We have meditation. Yes, we have very high-powered medical program based on science, and longevity is not just about hype. It's about peer-reviewed clinical studies, which have also some basic medical science behind them, which is understandable and recordable. But you need to tie in everything together, because if you started in one, you're not doing justice to the whole process unless you're looking at it in a holistic way.
So you believe that aging is not a fate we must accept, but rather it's a disease that can be treated and reversed.
Absolutely. And that's what I was alluding to earlier when we had our brief discussion, that we have to look at aging as disease. And we have to understand that most of the things that we get later in life, lack of mobility, osteoarthritis, dementia, cholesterol, high blood pressure, even cancer for the most part, are related to age. And we don't have to accept that necessarily. Our cellular processes will come to an end eventually. But I think we can control it much better now because we have at least the knowledge and some of the tools are in development, that we can actually change. Even, you've heard of the CRISPR gene. Yes. In 2012, there's even gene transcription to change the genetics is possible in mice, and it's been done. And I think it will be not far before it's being done in humans. But that application, I believe, will come mainly for disease which is genetic in nature, where people are early mortality, and come for aging much later, maybe 10 years from now.
So do you think that we should be using the likes of CRISPR to take out diseases? Or what if we want to choose our child's genes and make them smarter? Because there was some research saying that a good 50% of parents, if given the option, would like to intellectually increase their child before they're born. Is this something you think we should be doing?
I think ethics have to develop along with science.
Yeah.
We can choose the gender of our child. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, people would have questioned that. This is something that I think we need to take a deep breath, sit down and have a think about and have a consensus, because the science will evolve. I mean, you've heard of the term longevity escape velocity.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you describe that for the listeners?
So that is basically saying that if you live 15 more years, the pace of science to cure disease will outpace your body's capability to develop disease. In other words, if I live 15 more years, most things that I might get would be curable. Now, of course, longevity has, it's a narrative, right? It's something you understand. It's something that has an attraction for every segment of society, old or young. As you're young and you got taken aback by a blood test or, your glycan test. But still, it affected you, right? I think what that means is that it has an attraction to all age groups. And it should, because if you start replenishing your stem cell bank at the age of 35, your stem cell bank will never reach down to the level where I'm at 66, even if I'm trying to go up. I can go up, but I can never reach you had you started at 35 to start maintaining your stem cell bank in various ways. I'm not talking about getting stem cells necessarily. I'm talking about keeping the cells that you have because of your lifestyle. So it has and actually, this is important because right now, if I go and tell people that they are cellular lines being developed to treat cancer, even metastatic cancer, and that chemotherapy is not necessary for these, everybody is going to take a step back, rightfully, and say, he's talking nonsense. But that science is already in evolution. And when we talk about longevity, we're really talking about future medicine. We're talking about how we're going to deal with disease on the basis of improving your cellular health and even cellular technologies, rather than giving medications. And I would wish for a world, free of medicines.
Well, it's a possibility, I guess, isn't it? But again, I think what we're asking people is for this massive, almost societal shift. Like I'm so appalled that so many doctors don't even do these routine longevity testing and think about how to cure things at the crux of the cause, this longevity lifestyle, this healthcare rather than sick care system.
Yes, you asked the question earlier, why is it not available? It's not available because, right now, a lot of these tests are expensive. Our healthcare systems are largely based on insurance models. Insurance companies, with all respect, will look at the bottom line. And standardized testing comes into that because it has been analyzed, scrutinized, cut down to its absolute core basics. And so when you go in for a medical examination, they will run tests that are on the panel. And this panel has been developed over many years because it fits the so-called paradigm of how you're managing healthcare these days. But if there's more acceptance of more sophisticated testing, which will become cheaper with time and gives you more value and creates a population that is healthier for longer, this will benefit everybody. Governments, insurance companies, maybe not insurance companies, but governments for sure, and the population at large. So you see, we are in a revolution at the moment of healthcare. I think we are to healthcare what crypto is to finance. Now, the difference is crypto doesn't have a scientific basis, at least not that I can think of. I mean, I invest in crypto, but I think that your money is being manipulated to any nth degree. Print as much as you like, put its value up, put its value down. This is not in my hands, and it's way above my pay grade. So, but I think if there's a store of value like gold was, it's different. But for healthcare, this is science-based. This is stuff we've studied. This is stuff we've seen in the laboratory. Animal experiments have shown mice to become younger in front of you. So, can that happen for humans? Absolutely.
Wow. It's interesting to hear you talk about this because I remember very vividly recently I was speaking at an event and I said to the audience at the end, how many of you want to live to be 100? Expecting that everyone would be like, me. Nobody put up their hand, like one or two people. So at first I thought, everyone's obviously a bit shy about this. So I was like, who wants to live to 100? Put your hands up, like, expecting like, yeah, sort of thing. And literally barely anybody in the audience, not even 10%, wanted to be 100 years old. And I think part of the problem was that they envision 100 to be sickly, no mobility, like aches and pains. And you're essentially saying that we don't have to live that way. Like you said before that your grandson perhaps might even live to be 150 years old. So how, like for one, I've got a few different questions because obviously it's a very fascinating subject. So how for one can we inspire people to take that step to be healthy, to do all the tests and live to 100 with perfect vitality? And then two, my question is, why is 150 the cutoff? Why can't we live to like 300, say?
Yes, I know you like the 300.
I don't know why the 300 just kind of works, but maybe I could start saying 1,000, but I think if I start saying 1,000, people might think I'm a bit delulu. So I thought the 300s, it's a little bit delulu maybe, but maybe realistic.
I don't know if I can answer that question in particular. I think it's different strokes for different folks in terms of, but I do take on board what you're saying about people not raising their hands because of what they've seen. Like they've just seen, even now, if you talk to if they do interviews with people 110, 115 around the world, they don't really, I mean, they're there, they're cognizant, they answer questions, but they're quite frail for the most part. And I think that when people look at that, they think, okay, I don't want to go there because the quality of life is not there.
Yes.
So, I think age, we will conquer the numbers. I think we will see lifespan and health span matching lifespan more and more as time goes by. I couldn't put a number on it. I think it would be unrealistic. I think it's really a question of quality. Quality is so important. I mean, when you're living your life, you want to be living. Sitting on a chair and aging is not what I want to do. And certainly not, the difficult decision of switching off ventilators and things like that, because that's a whole other ethical issue, which I've seen a few times in family and friends. You're keeping someone alive on a ventilator. Are they really alive? Anyway, that's another ethical dilemma. But at the present moment, I think the things we can do, in answer to your first question, is that things we're doing already, because I think the good thing is awareness. So advanced biohacking, which you see in gymnasiums now, there is commercialization. I think we need to step back from that if we can. I don't think we ever really can, because commercialization is very much a part of human nature. And so when you talk about protein shakes, most of them are, sorry to say, are garbage. So you have to basically even filter out the so-called healthy things you're doing.
How can we pick our supplements
you're asking, I'm asking that question. I'm asking, okay, but what about what we eat? We're told it's organic.
Yes.
But organic, free range, do you know they all have little definitions? And free range probably means, you walked 10 meters as opposed to 100 meters. So I think we don't, because we're so busy in our day-to-day lives, we don't take enough time to perhaps even read on the back of a packet, what has it got in it? There was an app that I saw recently which gives you a food grading. Like, is it ultra healthy or ultra not healthy? And according to that grade, and they just have it on every product. I think that's a good system, provided it's bona fide and properly scientifically analyzed. Because we don't have a lot of time to read a lot of stuff. And basically, we're just living day to day, and we'd like, even if we have intentions to do well, you have to work extra hard to find out what it is. How many times a week do you go to a restaurant, for example? Are you going to sit and ask the ingredients? Are you going to believe it? Is the chef even going to be bothered to tell you? He's got a million other things to do. So it is a challenge, 100%. You can go on a farm, grow your own stuff, your own livestock, your own vegetables, do your exercise, see the green space, and if you can afford it, sit there for the rest of your life.
My God, I couldn't bear to end up back on a farm. I spent my whole life trying to leave it. But
yes.
So when we talk about advanced biohacking, so we've spoken about what food we should be eating, exercise, sleeping, literally all the stuff that my granny installed in me when I was young. But what other things can we be doing? So I was very interested to hear that stem cells, this actually rejuvenates stem cells by doing these sorts of things, but like injections, peptides, NAD therapy,
correct,
stem cell therapy, tell us a bit about these.
Okay. So I think when we're looking at, let's talk about stem cells, because this seems to be the buzzword. Well, stem cells are what? There are different sources of stem cells. They can come from your blood, they can come from the bone marrow, they can come from your fat. But mesenchymal stem cells are generally what we use. Mesenchymal stem cells can also come from baby's cord tissue, right? So we have this stem cell line that we use, which when we place it either locally, that could be in joints, which has been happening for a decade now, to reverse or to a large extent slow down the process of osteoarthritis, which is super common issue with older people, which restricts mobility. So stem cells in joints have been used for a while. In plastic surgery, we use stem cells by default for the last 25 years when we're doing fat grafting. Because when we're taking fat, it contains stem cells. When we inject it into the tissues and we notice skin quality getting better and texture and tone, we were beginning to wonder why, and then realized that we've actually been moving around stem cells for quite some time. So what do stem cells do? Well, stem cells are able to regenerate, your regenerative capacity increases. And stem cells can help for your natural nascent cells to recover more quickly. So it is important to have a stem cell bank for regeneration. Regeneration is the key word here. If you're able to create cells faster than cells die, technically you don't age. So, but you can't just come and put stem cells into a person without first looking at the internal milieu, as we call it, of the body. In other words, plant a seed in infertile soil and it doesn't grow. Same with the body and stem cells. So we need to remove microplastics, we need to remove toxins, heavy metals.
Oh, this sounds so difficult.
So it is and it isn't.
Okay.
Firstly is the assessment. And so there are tests that we do, which will give you, your inflammatory markers, so biomarkers, which are super important now. So biomarkers, like, okay, what is it? If you look at Howard's clock, what we call Howard's epigenetic clock, they're measuring 380 biomarkers and telling you, okay, where are you in the grand scheme of inflammation? So we need to get the inflammatory markers tested. We need to get your heavy metals tested. And along with the other profiling, which I mentioned earlier, once we've got that on board, then we go through a series of steps. Now, the first step, which we would do, is basically do an epigenetic profile also, tell you the stuff we already know, right? Lifestyle changes and so on. Hyperbaric oxygen.
Okay. Yeah.
Ozone plasmapheresis, in other words, take the blood, purify it, pass it through filters. They also have technologies called HHO now, which is hyperthermia, filtration, and oxygenation. So your blood actually gets taken out, goes through several filters, passes into a hyperthermic state, because we know that when we increase temperature, we increase the number of survival proteins. And this is why we get fevers. This is our natural body's mechanism to take away viruses and bacteria. So hyperthermia, and finally oxygenation in a heart-lung machine, like when we do bypass surgery. And that goes back in the other side. So what you're doing is removing a lot of the toxic materials from the blood. Then finally, photodynamic therapy. And this is really new and super interesting, because we pass laser fibers into the veins or into the joints in conjunction with the stem cells to potentiate. You've heard of the word chromophore.
Yes.
So, for example, chlorophyll in plants is a chromophore. The green, it takes, takes the oxygen and takes the carbon dioxide, releases oxygen. So these chromophores are targets. We have them in our blood as well. The light is stimulating particular chromophores to create certain physiological functions that help you. Increased immunity, increased muscle mass, increased, if you like, vitality of your cells, and your mitochondria, which are super important. The mitochondria are, mitochondrial capabilities, when they diminish, is when you lose your capability for cellular repair and energy. So when you're tying all of these things in, photodynamic therapy is one of the tools, so is hyperbaric, so is ozone, and then a series of different drips, like you mentioned, NAD, glutathione. NAD is the precursor fuel for your mitochondria. So, and that's got a lot of attention these days. Now, every little bit helps, but the science is behind putting it into a logical stepwise process, or making an SOP. And that's the exciting part, because the SOP that works has not been established yet. We're all in that race. And, and I believe it's got to be like that. Everyone's got to be on the race. We need to get data. Once we get this data, we can put it into artificial intelligence. Once we're able to do that, we're able to have an algorithm which would be like a doctor's assistant. Boom, 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 you do all these tests. Here, AI is going to think infinite times faster than we can think.
Yes.
We need to supervise. We need to individualize and personalize medicine. For sure. I'm not saying it's going to be carte blanche for everybody. But the AI is going to analyze all the doctors around the world, their data, and then we come up with some meaningful proposals on how we can actually cure disease in the future.
Wow. It's exciting, isn't it?
Super exciting.
So exciting.
Much more than plastic surgery.
Yeah. So you don't regret the career evolution?
Look, I don't regret the evolution at all. I haven't, I mean, obviously, these two subjects, they marry in quite well. The person who has an aspiration to continuously look younger, sooner or later realizes something's not quite right. I can only pull so much, I can only inflate so much, I can do so many energy-based devices, but, you know, something's not quite right. And on the flip side, the person who never really cared, but gets their vitality and their energy back by virtue of these treatments, they're saying, well, doc, what about this? And what about this? And like, I'd like to do this and this. You know, it's a renewed, if you like, a rekindling of interest in themselves. I mean, let's face it, most of us have lived quite stressful lives in our careers and personal life and whatever it might be. And we tend to forget. You know, we tend to forget ourselves. And in the process, I think that we don't do justice to our capabilities to heal inherently. We can do a lot, all of which I think we've spoken about, most of which anyway.
Yes. It's interesting. I look back over pictures of myself when I was about 25, and I look way older, I think. And also everyone tells me this as well. I've got puffy cheeks, like my eyes look a bit small, my skin's not very good. I just, you know, I look a little bit stressed, I think, as well. And I think it's been interesting over the years doing this longevity journey and, you know, really being quite mindful about my daily habits. And it's just fascinating, the kind of impact it can have, obviously not just inside, but also on the outside a bit as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, were you, when you were younger, have you lost a lot of weight since you were 25?
Yeah, I would say during those times, it was when I was first starting my business, and it was very much like, you know, go hard or go back to New Zealand, you know, locked myself in my apartment and was eating just like takeaway, and just, I lost all my friends. I was like, oh my God, I have to do this 24/7, like to get it off the ground, you know. And when I look back, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, like it's just not healthy, not sustainable. I'm obviously, you know, am I happy I did it? I think so. You know, I think it's probably what it needed to get off the ground. But yeah, you know, I was lonely, I was depressed, obviously not exercising either. Whereas now these days, like I'm very mindful about, even my thoughts, the food I'm eating, positivity.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all very important.
You know, what you went through, I think is probably very reflective of what a lot of people go through at points in their career. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, you know, in the sense that, you know, you do need time where you can just focus on one thing.
Yes. You need that obsession, I think.
You need that. And I think for short terms, it doesn't really matter. Just like, honestly, we talk about these things, but I mean, once every 10 days or a week, I mean, alcohol is probably the world's most recognized poison. And we celebrate everything with alcohol. There isn't a single occasion that we don't drink.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've quit alcohol mostly. Maybe I have like 1 or 2 drinks like on once a year, like absolute special occasions. But I kind of just went off the flavor a little bit as well. And I started to think like, my God, I wouldn't sit here and drink like, you know,
4 or
2
5,
cups or 3 cups of, you know, juice or whatever. Like, why am I sitting here drinking something so pointless a little bit as well?
Yes, I would agree. But we got to live as well. I think sometimes you have to move with, you know, I will have once in a while some dessert as well. My kids will probably laugh because they'll think it's more than once in a while. But anyway, you know, I mean, I think I've also grown up in a different era. In some ways, things were purer, I think. In other ways, we were given, as I mentioned earlier, the wrong information. Maybe because there was a lack of information. But I think we're all a lot more aware now. The question is whether we choose to do it or not.
Do you remember when like doctors back in the day, they used to say that smoking was healthy or drinking Coca-Cola, had health benefits?
Coffee, yes. Coca-Cola.
No, cigarettes. What did I
Cigarettes.
say? Did I say coffee?
No, you said Coca-Cola and
Oh,
cigarettes.
yeah.
But I would say coffee. I mean, coffee has had also a lot of controversy.
Yes.
But on the whole, I think it's good, depending, how often you take it. But I think with regards to cigarettes, I haven't actually heard of it ever being good for you.
I saw some like old advertisements where they were like, saying that smoking was healthy or something back in the day, and it makes me. It's just amazing how the world evolves and society evolves, and I guess the impacts of lobbying and the media and things like this
Media
as well.
is everything. Information-wise, media is everything, and that's why I think a lot of responsibility comes with media as well.
The media is so depressing these days. Do you think so? Is there anything we could do to, why is there not more reporting about all of these longevity treatments and all of these really exciting things you just told me about before, about how we can live healthy and how we can prolong our health span? Like, why is it that these just aren't commonly spoken about so much?
I think it's getting more and more, but we also have to remember that there could be also a period of too much information too quickly. There was a book written in 1969, I think, of Alvin Toffler. It was called Future Shock. Future Shock described too much change in too short a period of time is not good for us as humans. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think when I'm seeing a longevity revolution right now, so I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to enter the space, both commercially and also, existentially. In other words, they are executing. But whether or not the press is covering enough, not sure.
Yeah, I think the press could be a little bit more positive. I'm sure if we did an analysis, a majority of it is probably quite negative. And I think there's a lot of things to be excited for in life. And I just wonder if, we all have a responsibility, I guess, to share that sort of excitement and to help people feel a little bit more hopeful about what the future could be like.
Yes, I agree on that because, I think when it comes to the word stem cells, even now, there will be a lot of connotation which is negative. And there are people, doctors, saying that, all of this is hype. I can only speak by my own experience because, I've tried to understand the science. It's not my educational background. I'm a surgeon. I'm interested, so I read, and I try to read medical literature. I try to read anecdotal stuff as well, because sometimes the anecdotal stuff, I mean, that's what your grandma told you, right? It seemed to work for someone. So there's nothing wrong with taking a perspective of both, but obviously we look at science. Now, if you have not taken the time to look around, it's another story. But I have experienced in the 2 years that AEON has been set up, we have the privilege here of being able to give intravenous stem cells, which you don't have that regulation in the United States or Europe. And what I have seen in terms of disease reversal, or even to a large extent disease cure, has been quite phenomenal. Now,
what's been the most phenomenal story?
Probably a friend of mine, he's 80 plus, and he had, so because of right-sided heart failure, he had 90% of his liver was gone. So there's a FibroScan test which does that, tells you your liver capacity. And we did treatments for him, including IV stem cells. And in 1 year, he had 90% reversal of the condition. His gastroenterologist was looking at his FibroScan and said, "This is not yours." He said, "No, it's mine." And I know both of them, the doctor and the patient, so I know this actually transpired. Now, there were a few others, but I think this was to me the most remarkable. Now, indeed, the liver is the most regenerative organ in our body, so that's fine. But it gives you an insight, right? I mean, it gives you an insight. People look better, they feel better, they lose weight. Interestingly, they also seem, after IV stem, and again, this is anecdotal, that they tend to decrease their dependence on alcohol.
Interesting.
Alcohol, I did stem cells now maybe 3 times. But for the first week, I really don't want to touch. I don't want to. I'm actually kind of really put off even wanting to try.
Interesting.
Now, if I can carry that on, that's great. But, alcohol is, I believe, if we can stop, we should just stop.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think there's a point where we should just draw a line in the sand and just accept our fate and accept aging? And do you think there's any ethical concerns that we should be mindful of when it comes to pushing human longevity forward?
No, I think ethically the questions will always arise if you're using things like embryonic cells, right? I mean, if you see, for example, what we call, you have stem cells which are induced stem cells. For example, you can actually make stem cells to develop an organ. So induced pluripotent stem cells, it's called. So in Yamanaka in 2007, he used embryonic growth factors to manipulate adult mice cells to become any cellular line that you want. So technically now we can grow your heart in a Petri dish, expose it to different chemicals, and see how your heart responds to different drugs. That's being done now. So when you talk about pluripotent stem cells, we're talking about making a genetic identical twin, or embryonic stem cells, which means you have to kill a fetus to get it. This kind of research has a lot of ethical questions, and it needs a consensus, and it needs people to sit down and decide. It's much like abortion. I mean, we've been through this in humankind, in our evolution, through choices that we made in society, which kind of determine our behavior. And so this will be an evolution too. But here we're here to really discuss the science that's available. Now, ethical, I believe it needs to move hand in hand in answer to your question.
Yes. So when I'm thinking about my own longevity journey, and you know that I keep saying this 300 sort of thing, this age that I want to make it to, my backup plan, I've obviously got one, and that is to perhaps look at cryogenically freezing my body. So I went to the Alcor Life Extension Facility to inquire about this, and should I freeze my whole body, or I also looked at maybe just freezing my brain, with the idea that maybe once I get revived, they take my brain and then we put me into like a robotic interface or something like this. The other idea I have is perhaps going down the immortal mind upload route. So I essentially take my consciousness and upload it to the cloud. Okay, so these are my sort of backup plans. What are your thoughts about them? Do you think that this is, good routes for me? Do you have any other suggestions about my journey?
Well, look, neuroscience has not defined consciousness. We don't know what causes our consciousness.
I know, right? And here we are so busy developing artificial intelligence, and we barely know.
So now artificial intelligence is going to allow us to use data, analyze it, and basically draw conclusions far faster than the human brain can. But consciousness is kind of who we are. When we talk about mindfulness, mindfulness is living in the present moment. Consciousness is like your whole awareness of what's around you. So, we don't, neuroscience hasn't established those parameters yet. What gives us consciousness? So to be able to load it onto a computer, well, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it's potentially possible at the moment, for sure. And I don't even think in the near future. But cryogenics, for organ transplantation, for reproductive tissue, to freeze eggs and so on, yeah, it's being used and it's great. Now, whether the whole body cryonics can do the same, I believe it possibly could, because if you can revive an organ, or you can produce a child from a frozen egg, then of course you should be able to bring life back into a body once you have the technology to do it, provided the processes remain the same and that we have the capabilities in the future. So it's a very interesting field, and I understand there have been a lot of very wealthy individuals that have cryopreserved themselves in diseases where we don't have potential cures at the moment. But anything's possible. I mean,
Do you think it's something you might consider?
I never thought about it. For me, when I look at life in general, one of the things I've noticed now is because of 25 years of squash is my lack of mobility because of arthritis on the knee. And I begin to see the decline because of mobility. Cognitive decline is one thing, and then physical decline is another. And you need to prevent both. Now, as long as you're living a meaningful, purposeful life with objectives, interacting with your colleagues, society, family, and having fun, then you carry on. Because I'm not going to know when I'm dead. So it's not something that I think about. It's when I go, I go. But when I'm here is what's important. And so I'm not putting a number on it. It'll happen when it happens. I know that the life that I've lived or the opportunities that I've had are not the same as the opportunities of someone who's just born or, even a teenager right now. They have more choices. And probably through panels like what you're doing and through information dissemination, correct scientific information dissemination, they will have more educated choices. The big problem really lies in having, if you like, the commercialization, our food industry, our drug industry, everything that is around us to play ball at the same time without looking at just the bottom line, which unfortunately has been the case.
So treatments wise, what are you doing and how are you improving your health span?
So you mentioned peptides, and I didn't touch on that. So peptides are amino acids linked by what we call peptide bonds, and that's why they're called peptides. So guess what peptide we've been using for decades without knowing?
I feel like I know the answer to this question. Ozempic's a peptide, I know that.
Yes, but we haven't been using it that long. But that's
Yes,
a whole
I know.
separate discussion.
I know.
Insulin.
Yes.
Insulin.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so now, when you talk about peptides, they're great. So I use them. So, if you have CJC, isomorelin, thymosin alpha, beta, epitanon, so there's number, but these
Should
are
we all be using peptides?
I believe we use them based on our physiological parameters.
Okay.
And on your age and what you need. Now, it's good also not, and people are taking 30, 40. I was taking like 20 supplemental nutraceuticals. But it's wrong. It puts a huge load on your liver. You have to time these things during the day. And you have to have a scientific reason, logic or rationale to how you use supplements as well. I mean, there have been times when, for example, DHEA, on hormone replacements, people were doing, they talk about TRT, testosterone replacement. They talk about growth hormone and so on. Everything has its place, but bioidentical ones, not chemically produced, not lab produced, bioidentical. Hormones that resemble your own, these are usually gels. I use that. I use a testosterone gel. I use peptides. I use different nutraceuticals. So I will take vitamin D. Vitamin D, we're not getting enough in the sun. Someone of your skin type will burn.
Oh my
So
gosh,
you need
tell
to
me
take
about
vitamin D. Then I will also, I also take a lot of vitamin C. They do take glutathione, NAD supplements. So yeah, the list is relatively long, but I keep changing it. As my doctor keeps changing it. Because you should not do, remember, the body principle which really makes you make survival proteins is hormesis. You've heard this term. Hormesis is what doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So cryogenic, if you like, cryotherapy, intermittent fasting, interval training, these are all shocks to the system.
Yes.
Right, and when you have the shock to the system, you create survival proteins, which are good for you.
Okay, yeah.
Now, if you do too much of anything, okay, I want to fast 16 hours every day, and I keep doing this for months on end, it loses its efficacy. Some days do 24 hours, and some days, do 16, some days don't. Get your body into a state like that, doesn't know what's hitting it. So this is what it's all about, hormesis. And so when we're talking about nutraceuticals, hormone supplements, it's in a state of flux. We need to, I do my blood tests every 3 months, which is probably a bit over the top. But I do it because I have the facility to do it. Every 6 months is fine. And then you can see trends, and then you change. Because we're dynamic. As humans, we're dynamic. No physiology will remain the same, and neither through the passage of time, what you need will also change.
My gosh, I love it. So interesting. So parting words, what if someone's listening to this? What's the first thing they should do tomorrow?
Sleep well tonight. That's the start.
Yeah.
And you would be amazed how many people don't sleep well. I am amazed because I'm listening to people now a little bit more than I used to. And I've never asked anybody, do you sleep well? Like, okay, well, show me your wrinkles or, what's bothering you. But, we need 7 to 8 hours. Good sleep, REM sleep, wake up fresh, because your whole regeneration is happening when you're sleeping. And then I can throw in a whole lot of advice. But I would say, start with, when you put your head to the pillow at night, you should be able to fall asleep. Most of us overthink at night. And that's the time our minds are working. That's why we don't get enough sleep. And then there's looking at your phone, and there's the computer, and. So yeah, I think sleep is super important. It's natural. I would say that, yeah. And then make sure what you do in the morning is also a good start to the day. Yeah, that's basically it.
All right, everybody, get your good night's sleep tonight. Wake up, see the sun tomorrow.
And lie in it for a bit if you can.
Okay.
It's also great. 10-15 minutes of sunlight.
What about going for a little walk in the morning? I enjoy doing that.
Everyone, I believe, should have a morning ritual, right? If you have time. I know this sounds a little superfluous, but I think we all can make time. This whole idea of waking up early means you need to sleep early, obviously. But it does give you, and there's many books written on this, it does really give you a good start to your day. Because you can spend an hour and a half on yourself, and nobody's disturbing you. And it's super. It's really, really good. I've only adopted that now in the last probably few months. And you can't always stick to it because, every evening there's something, or someone's birthday, or something you have to do. But because you have to make it a priority. You may have to make yourself a priority.
I agree. No, I love a good morning routine, and it doesn't have to be super extensive. You don't have to wake up at like 4:30 and make it feel like it's a chore. Like it should feel like something enjoyable that, maybe you mix up different mornings. Maybe you don't stick to it every morning, but I think certainly, stretching, looking at the sun, sometimes I have a really nice...
And good stretching.
Breakfast. Yeah. Sometimes I don't have a breakfast because I'm fasting. Yeah.
How often are you fasting?
It's like super sporadic, to be honest. I would say mainly 3 times a week. If I was to put an average number on it, 4 times. Sometimes I go to like 5 p.m. fasting. And then other times I'll go to like 1. I kind of just eat when I feel like eating, to be honest. Sometimes I don't feel like eating at all. So I just don't eat.
That's right. Follow your body.
Yeah.
Follow your body.
I really do try and listen to my body. I've cut out all sugar as well. But then every now and again, I went to see this Chinese acupuncture lady.
What to be said about that?
Yeah, well, she actually said to me, she's like, do you ever eat sugar or sweet food? And I was like, no, completely cut it out. And she was like, sometimes if you're craving it, she said, have that brownie, was what she said to me. So every now and again, I'm eating a piece of chocolate brownie.
I don't think there's any harm in that.
No, I actually think I feel better. Well, she thinks that it's important for me. And it's not like I'm having it every day or every week.
Your body's not used to it. You take it. It's a little shock to the system, and probably has some other metabolic effects too. Right?
Yes.
I don't believe in being too rigid about anything. The minute you bring rigidity in, you're creating another constraint in your life.
Yes.
You need to be free, but you also need to feel good.
Yes.
And I think the feel good. So when you lose weight, what is it? Eating is a pleasure. It's one of the only 2 pleasures that we have in life, really, because we're born with. So if we eat, we feel good. But I think if you are light and you drop a pen, your ability to just pick it up in a youthful manner, it's a great feeling. Now, you take it for granted until you can't do it anymore.
Yes.
And so the feeling of losing weight, being able to wear the clothes you want, when you see yourself in the mirror in the morning, it outsurpasses the pleasure you get from eating. Ozempic, you mentioned, like now we have a lot of patients who on this. And that's a whole separate controversial subject.
My friends, a lot of them who were very, very skinny in the first place, have started taking it for longevity benefits. They're in the longevity space and they feel that it's good because it helps decrease inflammation. They're taking a little amount. Do you think this is true? Because for me, it's very frustrating when I go to dinner with them, because I'm looking at someone like super skinny who's just like pushing the food around the plate, because you know how they're never hungry. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are there are better ways to do it.
Okay.
I mean, if they're already skinny, why bother? In fact, I'm also against the idea of having someone on it for 5 kilos of weight loss. We don't know. We're already seeing some of the, there are some doctors who will disagree with me, and I accept that. I'm not claiming that I'm the one who's right. I'm just using some basic rationale. These things were developed for people who have diabetes. They were developed for people who are 20, 30 kilos overweight. They are unfortunately going to die anyway. So if they get any side effects from Ozempic, its probability is less than the fact that they're going to succumb to their comorbid factors. So for them to lose the 30 kilos with the help of some peptide, it's okay. Because the longer term effects of peptides, we're still under the stage of figuring those things out. But for 5 kilos, it's not worth it. And certainly if your friends are skinny already, I mean, they're obviously having the right lifestyle in any case. So they're restricting their food. So if they're doing it only as an appetite suppressant, so they don't want the food, well, no, I think that's pushing the envelope too much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on
You're
the
very
show today.
welcome.
It was so interesting. I feel like I've got a lot of food for thought in my longevity journey, which is ever evolving, as it should be.
Thank you very much, Briar. It was really nice talking to you as well. And
Yes.
thank you for your very interesting questions.
Yeah, I'd love to come down and see your clinic sometime as well.
More than welcome.
Have a
Anytime.
nosy. Yeah,
Anytime.
amazing.
At the Atlantis is where we're doing the longevity. So by all means, anytime you want, you have
Well,
my
that's an
number.
amazing location.
It's a location which actually was interesting. It was purposeful because this group of individuals who stay there, they are a little quirky. They are a little bit futuristic. They obviously are people of means. And what does one want when you have everything? Simple answer. You want to be able to prolong that in a nice way. So they are the perfect target market, if you like. And because their awareness is more, they walk into the clinic and sometimes embarrassingly know more than the front desk because they've been around the world. Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, China, places where and South America, places where you can get IV stem cells. They've traveled, but they're happy to find now a place where we are not really third world, neither is Japan, but they're finding everything under one roof, which is centrally located between East and West. So I think Dubai will be the forefront of longevity evolution. That's really my hope. And we're having a big conference on the 23rd of April to the 26th. Do you know about this one?
No, but I'm about to ask you because I
But
sound like I should know about it.
You should come.
What's it called?
It's called Next Generation Medicine from Laboratory to Clinical Practice.
Amazing. I'd love to come.
So we have, I think, 30 speakers, all sort of experts from around the world in longevity. It's very science-based at the Atlantis on 23rd April. So I'll get them to send you an invite.
Thank you. Would love that. Yeah.
And definitely you should come and
love to.
even if you want to speak with some of the guys there.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it, Olivia?
They're all, they're all professors. Some of them from Germany, some from Singapore, some from the States. We are accredited by GCLS. Have you heard of Geneva College of Longevity Science?
I have, yes.
So Dominic is coming also. Dominic Thor is the president.
Yeah.
And American Board of Regenerative Medicine, their representatives. And then University of Cologne. And of course, the Health Authority. So look, the thing is, the difference, I believe, is the scientific basis. everything is good. As I said, everything you're doing is good. But if you layer these things, so what we call stacking is important. Your epigenetic, your lifestyle, and your coupled with your nutrients, your IBN, all the technologies I spoke to you about. That's the way forward for those who can.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's also interesting. It's kind of like we're a recipe we can work on, you know? Baking a cake, a healthy cake.
A healthy cake.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people doing that now. I'm surprised. And they taste pretty good. Have you tried?
Healthy cakes?
Yeah, the healthy, the ones that are made with no sugar, no flour. But I don't know what additives are in there. You know, the problem is the additives.
I know. That's why I always like to make my own foods. Sometimes when I order things now, I'm just like, ugh, like it tastes disgusting to me because I'm so used to eating clean, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm more sensitive to it. I have like a lolly and I'm like, ah, you know, like a lolly, like candy.
Oh, right. Okay. A lollipop. Okay,
yeah.
right. Okay.
We call them lollies in New Zealand, candies, sorry.
Lollipop,
but I'll have one and I'll be like, whoa, you know, it's like I feel that epic sugar hit. Whereas I remember when I used to eat chocolate every night, like my body would start to crave it like it was like some kind of drug or something, you know? I had that I was addicted to it. It's crazy.
Well, it is because it spikes your sugar.
Yes.
The sugar brings in the insulin, and then you need insulin. You need more sugar.
Yes.
It's like just having a bad breakfast.
Yeah.
You get hungry fast. Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
It was amazing.
Really nice talking to you.
Thanks for coming on the show.